are very much grounded in economics, and many economists are hired for that purpose to do economic development work, tend to lead indicators projects. And from that perspective, of course, it is somewhat myopic. Myopic in the sense that you're just capturing a piece of that puzzle. It's only one element in that equation, and you might be missing the boat, so to speak. But nevertheless, it is a major concept that drives the formulation of many indicators projects out there. Another major concept that drives those indicator projects is this idea of social justice. Social justice. Now, what do we mean by social justice? Many community planners and indicators researchers develop community indicator projects guided by the implicit notion that community quality of life is a community which its residents enjoy a high level of social justice. Social justice. What does social justice mean? Society is considered just if two distinct principles are met. The first principles of a just society holds when there is equality in the assignment of basic rights and duties. The second principle of a just society holds when inequalities are justified to benefit the least advantaged members of the society. So how do we translate this concept of social justice into community indicators? And this is an example of those indicators that are guided by the concept of social justice. Now, by the way, I don't want you to sort of strain your eyes to try and copy any of this. For those of you who are interested, I can send you a copy of the slides. And, you know, the slides are somewhat comprehensive in that regard. But let's focus on this idea of, if you look at the left-hand side, basic rights and duties, equality and basic rights and duties. Then if we have inequality, then the idea is that inequality has to be guided in favor of those people who are considered disadvantaged. So if we were to discriminate in favor of certain types of groups, then yes, we can do that, and as a matter of fact, rightly, we should do that. It would be discrimination in favor of children, women, minorities, the poor, the disabled. These are the traditional groups that we should bend over backwards to accommodate them and meet their needs because they have a history, they have a background of disadvantage. But let's go back to the right-hand side and look at equality and basic rights and duties. The right to meet basic needs, like the percentage of population below poverty line, government entitlement programs directed to the poor, and equitable appropriations across all community groups. So in the way that government would appropriate funds to help people, it has to be done in a way that is non-discriminatory. Non-discriminatory. You can't favor a certain group of people than others. That's essentially corruption. That's nepotism. That's favoritism. Bad, bad, bad. So again, one of the basic dimensions of social justice types of indicator is being able to have a community that would, again, have a high level, a low level of population below the poverty line. So again, we want to reduce poverty, and we keep track of that. And the same thing with government entitlement programs directed to the poor. Again, we want to sort of up the ante, so to speak, on that, meaning we want to see a lot more appropriations to help the poor. And you look at that over time. Right to safety. That would be also a basic right and duty, and we need to have equality in the way we see a community experiencing, again, getting the benefits of safety, the right to safety. Crime rate. We want crime rate to, again, come down. We need government programs and expenditures to combat community crime and equitable appropriations across all community groups. We don't want a favoritism. In a sense, certain neighborhoods would have police, law enforcement, but in other neighborhoods, there's nothing because there's corruption. Bad, 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 right? So we want equitable distribution of the kinds of resources that would enhance public safety. How about the third one? The third one is the right to employment, unemployment, educational attainment, literacy, job skills, job training programs, and equitable appropriations across all community groups. Right to a healthful environment. Air pollution, water pollution, land pollution, noise pollution, incidence of disease, government programs that combat environmental pollution and equitable appropriation of across all community groups. So we don't want to essentially, one neighborhood that is so polluted and another neighborhood that is not that much polluted, because we may have corruption in the way that, again, funds are appropriated to reduce pollution. On and on. You got duty to pay taxes, duty to vote. So that's what social justice is. And the concept of social justice allows community indicators researchers to develop an index that would capture those conditions, social justice conditions in a community that would reflect the quality of life in that community. Human need satisfaction. Another major concept that you see quite a bit of work. And as a matter of fact, for those of you who are familiar with the Human Development Index, an index which is extremely popular in quality of life studies, and then has been managed or administered by the United Nations Development Program, is very much based on this idea of human need satisfaction, or sometimes we talk about it in terms of human development. What does that mean? Well, the basic premise underlying the concept of human need satisfaction is the notion that a community characterized as high in quality of life is one that plays a significant role in satisfying residents' developmental needs. What is developmental needs? Developmental needs refer to a hierarchy of lower and higher order needs, such as health and safety and economic needs. These are what you call basic needs. Sometimes we talk about them as lower order needs. If you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, then you'd be able to relate to the idea of lower versus higher order needs. So the higher order needs, of course, are needs related to social, esteem, actualization, knowledge, aesthetics. Again, so the idea then is that if you have a community that served to satisfy the full spectrum of human development needs, then that community is such that delivers a high level of quality of life. So how does that translate in terms of specific indicators? Here you got those indicators that are divided between what you call lower order needs and higher order needs. The lower order needs are basic needs. The higher order needs are essentially growth needs. So Indicators of satisfaction of basic needs would be things like measures of environmental pollution, measures of disease incidence, measures of crime, housing, unemployment, poverty, cost of living, community infrastructure, population density and crowdedness, illiteracy and lack of job skills. Notice these are measures or indicators of ill-being. So again, what we're doing is we're making a distinction between indicators of ill-being versus indicators of well-being. Indicators of well-being are essentially indicators that would capture growth needs or satisfaction of growth needs, while indicators of ill-being capture, again, indicators associated with basic needs. So we want to make sure that a community that delivers a high quality of life is a community that does both, right? Both, meaning that it satisfied the residents' needs in terms of basic needs as well as growth needs. What would be growth needs? And the indicators associated with growth needs would be things like measures of work productivity and income, measures of consumption and non-basic goods and services, measures of quality of leisure and recreation activities, educational attainment, community landscape, arts and cultural activities, intellectual activities, religious activities. Growth needs, indicators of well-being. Very different from when you're looking at things such as crime and housing and unemployment and poverty and homelessness, right? These are indicators of ill-being. You want to reduce the level of ill-being in a community, and you want to increase the level of well-being in the same community. And it is the conjoint of those two types of needs that delivers a high level of quality of life in that community. So, in a graphic form, this is what it looks like. Satisfaction of human basic and growth needs is one that delivers a high level of community quality of life. There's another concept that drives many indicators projects, is this whole idea of sustainability. Sustainability, we've been hearing a lot about sustainability. Sustainability in almost every walk of life, in almost in every field of study, in almost in every discipline, from sustainable development to sustainable economy to sustainable business to sustainable this and that. I mean, my goodness, it's a concept that has infiltrated so much of the social, behavioral, and applied sciences. So what is sustainability, and what does it mean? Sustainable communities are those that enhance the economic, environmental, and social characteristics of a community so that its residents can lead healthy, productive, enjoyable lives. Higher quality of life. Two sets of community characteristics are traditionally used to capture community quality of life, namely indicators of human well-being and indicators of ecosystem well-being. Much of the research that is done driven by the concept of sustainability tend to come from the environmental sciences. So environmental scientists not only capture things like water pollution or air pollution or a concept such as biodiversity. They go beyond this. It says, well, there is quite a bit of interaction between those environmental conditions and the social conditions and the economic conditions of the community. And therefore, we need to account for those too. We need to account for these too. So they start out with indicators of ecosystem well-being, and then they go into other indicators that would capture the social and economic aspects of the community. Let's be a little bit more specific. So if you start out with indicators of the ecosystem well-being, such as land, water, air, resource use. Again, example of indicators such as, land, diversity, and quality of forest, farmland, and other land ecosystems, including their modification, conversion, and degradation. Water, diversity and quality of inland water, marine ecosystems, including their modifications by dams and other structures, pollution and water withdrawal. Air, local and indoor air quality. Resource use, energy and material waste generation, disposal and recycling. So they start out with that, but saying this is not enough. We need to add the human well-being dimension. And what those environmental scientists who are doing those indicator projects have added health and population, wealth, knowledge and culture, community, equity. They talk a lot about equity issues. It's kind of very interesting. Health and population, things like physical and mental health, disease, mortality, fertility, population change, wealth, income, poverty, inflation, employment, infrastructure, basic needs of, for food, water, and shelter, knowledge and culture, education and communication, community, institutions, law, crime, racial and ethnic strife, and equity, distribution of benefits and burdens between or among social groups. Concept of sustainability. Community that is sustainable, based on those indicators, delivers a high quality of life than other communities that are less sustainable. How about if we just take a 5-minute break now, and then we'll get into talking about the second module, which would give you an example. I'll walk through an example that would give you an idea of how those concepts have been applied in a specific indicators project. And then we'll talk about those other modules. Let's take a 5-minute break.